Well, Tesla is looking to make a significant investment in India. CEO Elon Musk saying the company plans to do, in his words, what's humanly possible to establish a manufacturing presence there. This coming after he met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Tesla is just the latest American company looking to expand its footprint in the country, and Modi is looking to capitalize on that interest as he begins his state visit here in the U.S. Let's bring in Rick Rosso. He's the chair of U.S. India Policy Studies at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Good to talk to you today. You know, this is really turning out to be a bit of a tricky tightrope for the Biden administration. On the one hand, there's a lot of enthusiasm for business investments potential in India, and yet there's questions about their human rights record. What do you think the Biden administration is trying to accomplish on this visit?
Well, there's a couple of significant reasons to really try to build this relationship and underscoring that with a state visit. First and foremost, we see a more aggressive China in terms of security interests in the Indo-Pacific. India shares a lot of our interest in trying to make sure that we offset some of the more dangerous elements of China's rise. Although, you know, the United States is more concerned about the Pacific theater and that threat. India is more concerned about its own neighborhood. Second, the economy. India has surpassed China as the world's most populous nation, 10 years consecutive of averaging 6% growth now. That's a pretty good track record. So when we think about high growth markets for U.S. investment and trade, India is going to be central to global growth. India also wants, of course, access to the U.S. market. So the size of the economy, the potential for the security relationship comes together nicely, I think, to tee up it's expected to be a pretty significant visit this week.
Are there any discussions now to link our capital markets to those of India? You think back to the U.S. and China, those relations back in the day. We really never got we didn't get a tremendous amount of cross-pollination, but we did get a lot of dual listings, and we still have those, even as China threatens to dial some of that back. I'm just wondering, might we see something a little bit more pronounced with the fact that the U.S. and business elements in India are more aligned and we're able to share our capital markets together?
Capital markets is still going to be tricky. India has a lot of deregulation domestically that it has to do. Foreign banks, foreign insurance companies, foreign pension firms, a lot of the big pools of capital still have limitations on what they can do in country. So you do see investors there. You do see companies in all those industries. But without being able to fully build out your business and operate freely in the market, there's still questions on what the ceiling for that's going to be. And frankly, to your point, you know, this visit's going to have a lot of a lot of security overlay, including strategic commercial issues and defense. But general commercial issues, including financial services, market access and such, I don't think are going to be a significant part of the agenda. They remain kind of unsaid and really an area for the two governments to work on in the future.
Let's talk about some of the challenges that are likely to arise here. You know, on the one hand, we've got businesses who are looking at huge opportunities. At the same time, you've got the White House sort of saying, you know, we're not going to lecture India on the human rights issues, despite the fact that some social media companies have been censored in some way, despite the fact that under the Modi administration, we have seen what some would argue is the religious persecution of Muslim minorities. And I wonder, when you hear the message coming from the White House, is it fair to say it sounds a little similar to what we heard about the opportunities in China many years ago, which is to say we're going to de-link these two issues because the opportunities from a business standpoint is really significant?
I'm actually quite confident the president's going to raise these issues behind closed doors. He doesn't want to make a public spectacle of it, doesn't want to disrupt, you know, the positive elements of our relationship. But I know that the State Department, the White House, Congress are all very interested to make sure that India, you know, remains in the pathway of being a vibrant democracy. And some of these elements that we've seen on promoting intolerance on religious issues and such, to see that tamped down, especially as India heads into its own election season. But I think, again, that'll be handled privately. I think the upside on security cooperation and commercial cooperation is big enough where that's really going to be, at least publicly, the highlight and most visible elements of the visit. But privately, that'll come up pretty prominently.
We just mentioned Tesla, Elon Musk talking about potential opportunities in India. Obviously, Apple, another one. We've heard many companies talk about this potential, especially as they try to reduce their exposure to China. We have heard about the opportunity in India for many, many years now. Is this time around different? Do you get the sense that India has the infrastructure, has the regulation in place to allow for this big push to bring in more multinational companies?
I wouldn't say the government of India has necessarily been running to position itself as the next best option. There isn't, frankly, a lot of deregulation that the Modi government would necessarily need to do. A lot of that lies with state governments, and there where you don't see quite as much action as what would precipitate, I think, a major wave of U.S. investment. So you've got a couple of great one-offs, most of which you just mentioned. But if you look at India's own numbers on foreign direct investment coming into the country, it's actually dropped by about 20% in the last 12 months versus the 12 months prior to that. So you're not really seeing the numbers showing a groundswell of investment, but gosh, when the big telecom suppliers and others do start making announcements, maybe this is kind of the first wave, but I think we'll have to check in another year or two and see if the numbers kind of prove that it's more than just a few very visible one-offs, and there actually is a groundswell of U.S. companies making those big investments. Right now, the data doesn't show it's happening.
Okay, and I know you're going to be following that one closely. Rick Rosso with CSIS. Good to talk to you today. Appreciate the time.
Thanks.